Housekeeping before we get things going today. This is a new platform for us. Some of you may have been on some of our previous webinars, but just want a reminder, everyone is currently muted. So if you do have the ability later on in the session to raise your hand, and we will have the ability to take you off mute for Q&A. But for the meantime, if you're watching remotely or mobily, if you're running around getting things done, we do have everyone on mute, and we'll have a chance to take you off mute later. With that Q&A session, there is also a pod on the screen titled Q&A. You are welcome to enter questions throughout the course of the presentation. We will answer some of those in real time in the chat or out loud. We also have a designated Q&A time at the end of the session, and so we'll make sure that we get to as many of those questions as time allows. And at the very least, get responses back to all of you for any of the questions that you ask. If you need to get our attention, have a question pertinent, and when we get to that Q&A time, you can use the raise hand feature to get the moderator's attention, and then I will call on your name when we take you off mute, and can go from there. We are also recording the session today. We will be able to share out this recording as well as some of the additional resources and information we're going to talk about to you after the end of the call. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into our agenda today. And really, there's a couple of things that we want to cover. We know things have been a little wild and crazy this spring so far, whether it be on the weather front, on the political front, things like tariffs and everything else that's going on. And so I want to make sure what we don't lose sight of is what's still ahead of us, and some of the challenges that we might end up facing as we get into the season, whether we're talking about a wheat crop that we're already looking at spraying, or we get into corn, soybeans, cotton, and some of the other row crops as we move throughout the course of the season. So we'll work with our experts today to identify, how do we determine when we need to spray fungicide and how are they actually working? Making sure that what we're doing is actually going to do the job that we need it to, or that we're not wasting money on sprays that we're already to a point where aren't going to bring us any additional benefit. We'll talk through some tips for determining what are the best fungicides based on your need. And then do a little bit of a deep dive into some of what FBN.com is engineered to do, and really providing some digital solutions both on the financial and an agronomic side to help you get the right products in the tank and move things forward. Our speakers today, as I mentioned, my name is Colin Pennington. I'm Senior Product Marketing Manager here at FBN. We're going to hear from Dr. Mitch Roth, who we affectionately refer to as the fungus doctor here at FBN. He is our regional proprietary agronomist in the East region. And to kick things off will be Chris O'Hare, who's our regional proprietary agronomist serving the West and Western Plains. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the experts and hand it off to Chris to kick us off.
Thanks, Colin. As Colin said, basically what we're looking at today is making sure that we're using the fungicides where we need to use them, and not using them in situations where they don't really fit. So basically, as we jump into things here, when do I need to spray a fungicide? A lot of that is based off your scouting, and scouting is not from a truck. As you look at things going on out there in that field, crop discoloration that you see out there in a field like this, that's a wheat crop, you can see stripe rust, wheat streak mosaic, drought, or nutrient deficiencies in this. And really all that fungicide is going to help you on is if you have an actual fungus growing out there in the field. So something like mosaic or high plains virus that can look like rust or something like that from the roadside isn't going to be affected by a fungicide. So as we said in this particular one here, mosaic is going on there. Your fungicide won't help the mosaic virus because it is a virus instead of a fungus. You may see something like a strobiluron actually enhance plant health for a little bit just because of the natural characteristics of that strobiluron family, but the virus is still there, and it's going to keep developing as the season goes on. An insecticide may help in a situation like this because you have mites out there in the field that are feeding, and basically spreading that disease. On the other hand, with that, stripe rust, like in this situation here, you can see that this rust has actually damaged that plant already. This is quite a ways along. By this time, there's already going to be a lot of yield damage from that. So in this case, a fungicide can be very good. There's a lot of a lot of fungicides that are labeled for stripe rust, and stripe rust is actually one that is very easy to kill. In a situation like this, with the stripe rust as heavy as it is at this stage here, that's actually probably been in the field 20 plus days at that time frame. So it's very late in the time frame of being able to spray. The damage that's already been done is permanent damage. So that when you look in there where like right in through this area here in the middle, where the rust damage is at, that damage isn't going to be replaced by running the fungicide, but it'll keep it from spreading even more. And the next part that's very important when you start deciding whether to run a fungicide or not is the triangle that's based on here is the same triangle with any disease. You have to have a susceptible host. The virulent pathogen has to be there and a conducive environment for it to spread. So a lot of times we get into that hot, dry summer out in the plains. The disease may be there. You may have a susceptible host, but because it's not a conducive environment, the fungicide isn't normally necessary because you don't have a lot of damage going to happen because the disease isn't going to spread like normal. So the next step in there is on when you need to spray is look at where the disease development is, the genetic resistance naturally occurring in my crop, and the growth stage that I have. So in something like this wheat crop that we're looking at on the pictures here, the biggest thing with a wheat crop is protecting the flag leaf. So in that situation, you're wanting to make sure that flag leaf is out and growing, and then you would be hitting it with the fungicide. Another situation that you need to keep into consideration when you start your scouting is the universities do a very good job about monitoring funguses as they develop across the U.S. As you look at the bottom of the slide here, right under the map, it shows where this image came from. That part of it is very important to look at is as funguses develop across the country, they spread. So when you're trying to decide whether to make that application or not, look at where the traditional areas are and look at the areas that are spreading in that year. The next thing that you look at is with the susceptibility is how much resistance do I naturally have with my crop and the growth stage. Genetic resistance in the crop is rated usually on the cereals. A lot of times they rate those based on the year when it came out. And just like a lot of other things have, mutations happen with the diseases, and some of those resistance ratings can go down over time. So even though you have a very high natural resistance in certain crops, it's worth checking that field to see if you have developed a fungus out there. And as I said earlier, is there a history in the area? And then is the season a season where it is spreading rapidly? This next slide that we have, another one of them that's based off of the risk monitor. At the bottom of that, you can see with wheat scab on here, genetic resistance. The other thing that you can have right along with the genetic resistance is if you treated the seed in the fall before you planted it on a wheat crop. The growth stage, very important with head scab because you need a fully headed plant. Basically, right around the time of pollination is when the head scab is really an issue with it. Then as you step down here, is the pathogen there? If it's not, there's no disease. In a case like scab, it takes very high humidity, moderate temperatures, and a susceptible host out there. Um, and like you say, looking at that drop or excuse me, fungus monitor on that disease is a big thing. Another one with the up north, when you start dealing with white mold, later in the season is when you're seeing your white mold. Um, that growth stage basically around uh, flowering. Basically, the disease as higher humidity and a fuller canopy actually increases the potential of that disease out there. This one's a Wisconsin university report here. So how do these fungicides actually work? Basically, you have three groups with a couple of different mechanisms working on here. The triazoles are the ergosterol synthesis, where your strobilurons and SDHI1s, HDIs, are disrupted electrical transport in the mitochondria. The key with this is your curative on your triazoles. Curative meaning that it'll actually kill the fungus that are already growing on the plant, where your preventative are more focused on before the plant starts developing the fungus on it, putting it down in there. So as we go through here on these stages, you see at the before stage, no fungus there. Basically on that bottom of that, where you see the fungus actually shows up on the cell wall, starts breaking down into the plant, the disease develops, and over time, that disease is going to start damaging leaf tissue. The big key with this on that side of things is you want to get in this effective window on the first three leaves is where you want to have it. If there's scouting that's been done and you're seeing disease pressure to the south of you, winds are moving it north, you want to get it taken care of in that first two stages, even before the third stage. Once you start getting to the third stage and beyond, you actually are going to be seeing a lot of yield loss already once you start seeing that. Even if a fungicide is run, you're going to see yield drop from it because that leaf is damaged and it will not regenerate the leaf that's been damaged. So what else can go in the tank with that? Water is naturally a high surface tension. It's going to stay up and rounded up. It's not going to lay out flat on the leaf. So coverage is very limited with a straight water and fungicide. Adding a spreader wetter is going to flatten out that droplet. It's going to keep the droplet wet longer on the leaf surface, and it's going to increase your efficacy of that fungicide treatment. So in a case like this one here, take a look at that. That untreated with just straight water and a fungicide, you're sitting there at maybe a 30% coverage with that fungicide on there. And look how much better you have with the surfactant added into there. Having that coverage is going to be key in making a good application with a fungicide. The other things that we can really go into the tank with that, we like to run the Ataris and Nourish Vitals when we're running these passes with fungicides and insecticides both. The reason for it, Ataris is amino acids and peptides. Nourish Vitals is amino acids, peptides with a load of micronutrients. What we're gaining when we're adding these in here is once a fungus is in there and doing damage to the plant, it's also making that plant so it's not healthy overall. By having an amino acid and peptide blend in there with it, it keeps that plant healthier longer and helps it go through the damage of the fungicide. So, or excuse me, the fungus. The treatment of the fungicide is going to also help with the health of the plant, but having the aminos and peptides in there are a great addition to keep that plant healthy and take back off and grow quicker. So these pictures that we have here on this next slide are actually some Nourish Vitals that we ran both at top dress and with the fungicide on wheat. This particular treatment was one that I did myself down in Oklahoma. We actually ran the first pass on it with an early top dress just after the wheat came out of dormancy. And then we turned around, and when they ran their insecticide and fungicide at Flagleaf, we ran Nourish Vitals at that same time. The one on the right was up here in Kansas. Some heavily stressed soybeans out there. We had a very dry summer in that area. But what we ended up seeing by adding the Nourish Vitals into that treatment was we went from about 9 pods per plant up to about 20 pods per plant, which obviously will help on your final yield at the end of the year. So what fungicides are best for my operation? For that, I'm going to kick you over to Dr. Mitch Roth. He's our in-house specialist on fungicides and has a long history of working with them across the Corn Belt.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. A lot of good information there, a lot of good considerations, getting out there and scouting, adding a surfactant, making sure you're using a protective fungicide anyway, or a preventative fungicide. You want to make sure you're covering as much of the leaf as possible to prevent that disease from ever taking hold. And then, yeah, those biostimulants, sometimes they can get a bad reputation as snake oil, but I mean, it's really like humans taking care of themselves. We often take medications, which would be like the fungicides, but then we also rest, relax, drink lots of water to get more energy, right? And that's what the biostimulants are doing when you pair them with a fungicide, is giving that plant more energy to then start recovering from that infection as well. So if you've gone out and scouted, or you're concerned about a disease and you're trying to figure out which fungicide to select, there's a lot of things you can consider. If you listen to the local radio station or certain ag podcasts, you may be hearing about some of the newer fungicides, 3 modes of action all in one. You may be wondering, is the performance worth the price, and other considerations. So if you're asking yourself what fungicide is best for your operation, there's 2 key considerations that I would recommend thinking about in pretty good depth. The first being, what disease are you most concerned about? Chris talked about head scab in wheat and white mold in soybeans. I'm up in Michigan. Those are 2 diseases that are very top of mind for us. We get a lot of moisture, and those are 2 diseases we commonly see. Maybe in your geography, you're concerned about diseases that I'm not concerned about, just because of the environmental component and environmental impact of some of these diseases. Nobody knows your region or your field as well as you do. So you are the only one that can answer that question. What disease are you most concerned about? And then the second key consideration is, what does it cost? Fungicides, just like any crop input, especially in years like this year, they range very significantly. And that's one thing that we at FBN have been trying to cut through, and can continue to try and cut through with price transparency, listing our price all the time on the website, doing our due diligence to make sure it's a competitive, fair price. So what can you do to figure out, what fungicides are most effective against the diseases that you are concerned about? Well, there's two things I want to highlight: that certain fungicides perform better against certain diseases, and there's no one fungicide that is highly effective against all diseases. There's no silver bullet, there's no magic cure. Even if the price on some of these fungicides may make you think that at that price it better fix every disease, right? That's just not the way it works. So thankfully, there are university extension and other researchers doing a lot of work to study all of these different fungicides in their own environments against many different diseases that are common in their area. One of those groups is the Crop Protection Network. It's a product of land-grant universities. So this is a group of university faculty who have decided to share their data, pool it together, to make broader recommendations and considerations and evaluations of what fungicides are actually working against what diseases, and how effective are they, actually ranking them. So this is from university extension. So a lot of times this is taxpayer funded work, and so it's freely available. This is one example of one of their pieces of work at Crop Protection Network that you can access for free at that link down below. So this is showing an example of their corn fungicide performance rankings or efficacy rankings. So you can see on the left-hand side that column of active ingredients that are hard to pronounce. Then the next column over are some of the brand name or trade name products you've more likely heard of. And then you go over a few more columns to the right, and you'll see those alternating gray and green colors that represent different diseases, foliar diseases in corn. And you'll see letters in there. So these are rankings. So you can see in here, if you can see this, azoxystrobin or Quadris, generic Quadris, is very good against anthracnose. It's excellent against common rust, and so on and so forth, all the way down to tar spot where it's not labeled, right? So the label is the law. We cannot recommend just spraying azoxystrobin to try and manage your tar spot if that is a disease in your area. But they have, this is a very big, it's about 2 pages worth of data in a nice organized table like this, and it's freely available. So you can evaluate based on your disease of concern and go through and find all the E's you can, E for excellent, and try and pick one of those fungicides because that's going to give you the best control over products that are ranked good or fair or poor. So, take the time to do your due diligence and figure out what fungicides are best for the diseases you're concerned about, or work with your FBN rep. We're doing a lot of internal training as well to make sure all of the sales reps know that this information is available and can help guide you to an effective product or an effective set of chemistries. So that would go towards efficacy. But then the second consideration is price, right? What does your fungicide cost? In a year like this, where commodity prices are low or fluctuating and input prices are high and also fluctuating, this is a very important consideration. And so I wanted to highlight one of the key benefits of being a member of FBN is price transparency. If you buy from us and or upload an invoice for crop protection products that are not from FBN, you get to unlock this type of chart here. And this chart tracks the market average pricing of different products over the course of, in some cases, many years for certain products. So since this seminar is about fungicides, we're going to highlight a few examples. The first being Quilt Excel or other products that have this similar proportions of azoxystrobin or propiconazole, right? The current, as of very late last week when we were putting these slides together, market average per gallon for these products are $59.40 per gallon, okay? And you can see if I hovered over one of those blue dots there and it said we had 5 reported prices, you can see the range. Somebody paid $41.27. That's a pretty good price. And someone paid $107 per gallon for this product, so nearly double what the average is, right? So the products range very much in price. At FBN, we have a generic equivalent to Quilt Excel, branded Quilt Excel. Ours is called GCS Azoxyprop, and current cash price is $51.99, right? So we are listed below the market average according to our intelligence. It's available in 2.5 gallon jugs and totes, and you can check out at fbn.com anytime. And that price savings can add up pretty significantly across a broad number of acres, right? And just connecting it back, okay, if this is a project you think you're interested in based on price, or maybe you've used it before, it's in your comfort zone, double check how good is it against the diseases I'm concerned about. So for example, I pulled 3 of them here. Southern rust, it gets a very good ranking. So on a numeric scale, it's along the lines of an 8 out of 10. Northern corn leaf blight, again, very good, 8 out of 10. Gray leaf spot, this product is excellent against. So there are other products that might also be excellent against gray leaf spot, but if they're 3 times the price, maybe you'd lean towards a product like this because it's going to give you very similar performance, which is excellent at a much more affordable price, right? So you've got to balance those 2 key considerations. And I left tar spot off of this list just because certain azoxystrobin, propiconazole premix products do have what they call a 2EE label recommendation from FIFRA, where you can use these products to control tar spot. And some of the university trials have seen really good efficacy with a mixed mode of action, a group 3, group 11, strobilurin and triazole, just like these products. But the Crop Protection Network has not collected enough data to give a confidence score. So I left it off of here. And if you got to check your state, if you have questions about whether or not you can use Azoxyprop against tar spot in your state, you can reach out to me directly or any FBN rep, and we can pull that label for you and let you know. Another fungicide that's really popular right now in the market is Delaro. Okay, this is a premix, again, of 2 modes of action, this time being prothioconazole and trifloxystrobin. If you're an FBN member, you reap the benefit here of seeing price transparency of these products. So again, this particular mixed mode of action product, you can see the products range. We have 11 reported prices over the past few months, between $192 up to almost $300 per gallon. Market average around that $261.31. At FBN, our portfolio is shifting and growing. We did recently onboard a generic version of Delaro, very similar mix of prothioconazole and trifloxystrobin. Current cash price is $220 per gallon. Okay, so and currently available in both totes and 2.5 gallon jugs. So if this is a product you're used to using and it's an attractive price, you can get this now at fbn.com. But again, I'm going to encourage you as an agronomist to double check whether or not this group of fungicides in this product will be effective against the disease you're concerned about. So the same corn diseases, just as an example, southern rust, this time it gets a 7 out of 10. So if that's your disease of concern, perhaps Azoxyprop is going to be better. It got an 8 out of 10 and it's cheaper, right? So in that case, if southern rust is your primary disease concern, that would be my recommendation. But your operation, your decision. Northern corn leaf blight, 8 out of 10. Gray leaf spot, 10 out of 10. And this time, university faculty at the Crop Protection Network have enough data to confidently say that Delaro, or this premix of prothioconazole trifloxystrobin, gets a 7 out of 10. It's good to very good against tar spot. Okay. All right, and so we've thrown a lot of information at you, right? Chris talked about mechanisms, how these fungicides work, inhibiting ergosterol or the electron transport chain in the mitochondria. We've talked about different active ingredients and other external resources for predicting risk and brand names versus generics. It can be a lot to keep track of. And so I just want to let you know FBN.com is engineered to help. If you can't get a hold of us or you can't sleep at night and don't want to bother anyone, it's the middle of the night, FBN.com works 24/7. It's engineered to help you sift through the world of generic crop protection products. So what do I mean by that? There's a few different examples. First, number one, we don't expect you to keep up with all of the generic brand names, right? The first to market brand names are often the ones that stick. So in this talk, I mentioned Delaro, right? It's a premix of prothioconazole, trifloxystrobin in a specific proportion ratio. You can search in the search bar at fbn.com, and before you even hit enter, you will see that Delaro comes up as a suggestion, but so does this prothioconazole trifloxystrobin value pick. In that blue text there, it says as compared to Delaro, and over to the right, it says sold on FBN. So we're telling you, hey, there is a generic version compared to Delaro, very similar, and we sell it on FBN. You click on that, it'll take you right to the product page. Same thing with Proline. That's a single mode of action product, prothioconazole. If you start typing that in, again, you see two main results here. The value pick as compared to Proline, sold on FBN. If you wanted information about Proline, you can also click on that and see the price transparency information or find the label if you need to read the label. We keep all the labels on those product pages too. Topsin, that's a mode of action we didn't talk about, thiophenate methyl, but we have a generic version of it, currently selling it under a value pick. And then Quilt, the last example here. You don't even have to type in the full name, Quilt Excel. Just Quilt will start pointing you towards the GCS azoxyprop, which is the same formulation with azoxystrobin propiconazole as Quilt Excel. So let the search bar do some of the thinking for you. If you know the brand name and you want to see if FBN has a generic and what the price might be, just type in the brand name, and 9 times out of 10, it'll point you to a generic product if we've got it. Another thing that we can do comparing brand name products to generics is creating a shopping list. So shopping lists they're a newer feature at FBN. They've gotten a big facelift. They do a lot of things all in one place, just pretty awesome. And it's even more awesome if you share a non-FBN invoice with us. We can do as close to an apples comparison side by side all in one page, and we do it for you. So I encourage you to upload a non-FBN invoice to your account or work with your FBN representative, and they can upload it on your behalf. And then we do this as a service to you at FBN. We will create a shopping list based on that invoice. So in this example invoice, a customer bought both Proline and Delaro. Okay. And while those products are grayed out, we don't sell those at FBN.com. We do have similar products available at FBN, right? And so we're pointing out the prothioconazole value pick and the prothio trifloxy value pick. If the price is also on your invoice, we will compare our listed price to the exact price you paid. If the price is not available, we'll list the market average price, okay, and still tell you whether or not, based on market average, whether there's cost savings by going generic, right? And even if you go through this process and all of our products at FBN happen to be more expensive than what you bought, congratulations. You bought really well. You got very competitive pricing, and FBN just validated that for you, right? That's still a service we provide. And sharing those invoices really helps FBN provide that service to the network, to its members, of price transparency, letting you know where the market's at, how well you're doing, and where our pricing is at given the rest of the market. So one last shout out. If you have never done that before, uploaded an invoice to the network, please do so. Work with your FBN rep to show you how to do that, or click around enough. You'll find that upload a non-FBN invoice here. If you click around enough, it's posted in quite a few different places. And last but not least, FBN.com can also help remind you what else can go in the tank for that particular product that you're interested in buying. So Chris talked about surfactants. He talked about biostimulants, foliar feed products. These are good things to include with a fungicide. Some fungicides require it, some recommend it, and others it's just good practice. It doesn't hurt. The label doesn't say one way or the other, but we've seen and research has shown that if you include a surfactant, for instance, you improve your performance, right? So if you were shopping around on FBN.com, you wanted to buy some azoxyprop, if you click add to cart here, FBN.com will then remind you of other tank mix components that are applicable to this one product. So if you click add to cart, you'll see this little pop-up come up, and you'll see 3 options right there. An APE-free surfactant, which is label recommended. In FBN terms, that product is our Inzorb ADV. That's the one we recommend for surfactants with fungicides, insecticides late in the season. There's drift control. If you're concerned about drift, if you've got neighbors who are growing a sensitive crop like hops or potatoes or something like that, and you just want to avoid that altogether, that risk of drift, we've got drift control agents as well. If you wanted to add a foliar feed product with a heavier peptide load like a Taurus, or a micronutrient package like Nourish Vitals, you can also click on one of those. So just as an example, if you clicked on the foliar feed options because you were interested in adding that to your azoxyprop, you'll get faced with another pop-up like this that says, all right, here you want some Taurus. What crop are you going to be spraying? I selected corn, enter the number of acres, 500 acres. It'll do all the math for you. You can adjust the rate if you want. The default rates are based on the label, tell you how much you need, and you can add it right to your cart right from there. So again, doing some of the thinking for you to remind you what tank mix products are appropriate for that product that you've already added to your cart. So we hope that this has been a helpful seminar to you. I think I'm going to kick it back over to Colin for one last shout out about current offers going on. And then we'll have plenty of time for some Q&A about fungicides and disease control. Over to you, Colin.
Thanks, Mitch. And you certainly could have covered this as well, but I think a good reminder as Mitch ended. So wanted to make everyone aware, topically relevant to what we've just discussed today, some of the offers available through FBN now, and that is our current offer around optimizing your fungicide tank mix. And that is 10% off our in-plant Inzorb ADV products from an adjuvant perspective, and Nourish Vitals. So an opportunity to maximize that fungicide performance, as Mitch mentioned and kind of walked through, the value, and Chris as well, of Inzorb ADV specifically, and then that late season nutrition bump, if that's what we're looking for, 10% off. Those products happens automatically when you put them in your cart when you're shopping at FBN.com. And if you happen to be paying with any cash payment methods, you'll get the 6% cash discount as well. So up to 16% off these products. So a great opportunity to get ahead of what we need and make those purchases. And so those offers are available to you all through the month of June. So hope everyone will take advantage of that as well. So that wraps up the content portion of today's presentation. We do have time for a Q&A session here. So if you've got a question you would like to type into the question bar, you are more than welcome to do so. We can read them out loud, answer them in the chat. You're also welcome to hit the little hand raise button if you'd like, and we can take you off mute and you can ask your questions out loud to our agronomists on the call here today. So appreciate everyone joining, and we'll turn things over to Q&A. Let us know if you've got a question. All right, here's the first question. Thoughts on adding an insecticide at the same time you're applying fungicide? Chris, Mitch, which one of you would like to handle that one?
My thoughts are, yeah, I mean, first response would be if a lot of insecticides are compatible with fungicides, an effective insecticide that's going to target, use a different chemistry to control spider mites versus aphids. My mic is, am I having mic issues? Maybe Chris can jump in here and reiterate then.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Like what Mitch was saying, anytime that you have both pests out there in the field at the same time, it's a good time to throw that in there. You know, in the modern world, that pass across the field's an expensive pass just for the equipment. So if you're out there having to make that pass across the field, throwing in a insecticide, but the big key with that is when you're running that insecticide with there, make sure you're picking an insecticide that specifically fits the bugs that you're trying to kill. There are several different classes of that, which I believe we're having a webinar on that in the near future. So make sure you pick a class of insecticide or miticide that fits the bugs or mites that you have out there, and it's a great thing to put in there with it.
And hopefully my mic is coming through a bit better there. Thanks, Chris. Same rules apply, fbn.com. If you're shopping for insecticides, type in the brand name into the search bar. You'll get pointed towards generics that we are carrying. And if you add an insecticide to your cart, it will oftentimes recommend appropriate tank mix partners like surfactants or crop oils. Some insecticides benefit from a crop oil instead, and or any biostimulants, foliar feeds that you want to add since you're going over the top of that crop anyway. So any other questions?
I'll throw one at you here, Mitch, before we wrap up and just maybe speak to a little bit. And I know you covered it a little bit in relation to the crop protection network data that you shared, but maybe just longevity. You know, are there situations where we may need to go in and spray twice? You know, Chris just mentioned, you know, that late season tank mix is an expensive one. It's certainly not getting any cheaper. And in a year where we're a little more cost conscious than maybe we are, we want to make sure we don't give up on that crop and make sure we capture every bushel. But kind of situations could we look at where we might need to make sure we're staying on top of things and making sure that there could potentially be a second spray that we need to make?
So could there be a second spray needed? Yes, absolutely. It depends on the year and the environment and the amount of pressure. You know, generally speaking, any chemistry that gets sprayed out into the environment is going to be affected by the environment. And in the case of fungicides, a lot of fungicides don't last super long. Whether the label, you know, if you dive into the labels, I think the longest you'll ever see is 21 days. And even that is a bit of a stretch in reality. And is that 21 days is going to be dependent on the weather. These things can break down when exposed to a lot of UV light, high temperatures, rainfall, right? All these things can affect the longevity of a fungicide. So that's, again, the importance of scouting and applying at the best time that you can. When you see the first symptoms starting to develop, or you hear a neighbor, you know, a few miles or, you know, if you're on social media and you're hearing neighbors a few counties over are experiencing a disease, then that might be the time to go out and spray to get that protection out there, and then get out there and scout again a few weeks later to see how well it did. Maybe you'll leave a check strip, or if you're starting to see disease start to develop, it might be time to hit it a second time. It depends on the disease, for sure. A lot of the rust diseases you heard us talk about today are pretty wimpy against most chemistries. So one well-timed fungicide is usually all you need to control a lot of the rust diseases. Something like head scab, you really only get one shot at it, just due to the nature of the wheat crop as it's growing and heading out. Some of the universities with respect to tar spot have tested one application versus 2 applications, whether that one application is early at tassel or late at like V3, V4. And, so it really depends on the disease. For something like tar spot, they're finding that, one timely application is usually sufficient in most years, as long as that chemistry had 2 modes of action. So it depends on the disease, but absolutely a second spray can be warranted.
Great. Well, thank you, Mitch. And thank you to everyone who joined. That ends the Q&A section. And so we are completed with today's webinar. If you wouldn't mind taking the brief poll to the right-hand side, let us know what you thought of today's content. We will be sharing this recording back out to you over the next coming days. So if you missed anything, want to reference it, as well as a few additional resources we've got linked at the bottom here. One of the tools we didn't talk about in a lot of detail, but can be very helpful in planning and kind of understanding what fungicide is going to work best for me in the spectrum of diseases that I may be facing across crops, is our FBN acre plan. So I would encourage folks to click on those and check them out. I've also got some quick links to Nourish Vitals and Inzorb ADV, those products that we talked about being great companions for those fungicide passes as well. So again, thank you to everyone who joined. I really appreciate it. And we hope to talk to you soon. In the meantime, stay safe out in the field. Thank you.